Surf's up, San Diego. Hello and welcome to another CBS 8 Throwback Special. I'm John Howard. Thanks for joining us for a deep dive into the CBS 8 archives and a look at the history of surfing in San Diego. The video behind me is the oldest surfing film in the CBS 8 vaults. Love it. Longboarders enjoying just another beautiful day at Wind and Sea in 1954. Since the 1950s, CBS 8 has covered the sport and lifestyle that is surfing. From its humble beginnings when boards were long and the sport was niche, to the 1990s when it was fully ingrained as part of our Southern California lifestyle. We paddle into our special with a look at the 1960s. Those who put their toes to the nose in that decade were trailblazing to international waters, finding what has become an iconic surfing hotspot south of the border, and acting as ambassadors for the sport and the city at large. Surfing was gaining status. San Diego was becoming a hotbed for organized clubs and competitions, and it was all captured on CBS 8 cameras.
I think it's a terrific sport. I played all sports in college and in high school, and I think you get the same satisfaction in surfing every day that you do in a game or some type of athletic contest.
In a report from 1965, Mel Canet taught us surfing's lingo of the day. The Grammies were the beginners, the hot doggers the trick artists, and all were on their slabs, shooting the curl or riding the shoulder.
Well, this is not necessarily a contest of you against somebody else. It's you in the water.
Yeah, yes it is. That's another thing that's good, is a chance for you to be by yourself and do something on your own.
By the mid-1960s, San Diego had established itself as a surfing mecca. The surf wasn't as big as other hotspots in the world, but some of the best surfers in the world hailed from the beaches of America's finest city. Wind and Sea Surf Club had more world champions than any other such club.
When the surf is up, are there times when you're scared out there?
Most I've ever been scared is in the islands. I don't think I've ever been really scared on the coast, except when I was in my earlier years of surfing.
What happened out in the islands that scared you?
Well, it's just the size of the waves.
How high were they?
It was about 14 foot.
It's a lot of water on top of it.
It is.
Have you ever been hurt?
I was hit once, and I think all my times of surfing, where it hurt me, I was hit in the head. I was knocked unconscious, but luckily there was somebody close by that they saved me. I don't really think there's too much danger in surfing once you get better, because as you surf, you know where the board's going to go when you fall, almost always. Because if you fall in front of it, it's going to go up and go over the wave. If you can duck into the wave, I don't think there's really too much a chance of you getting hurt.
Dickie, why do you surf?
I don't know. I started about 4 years ago, and I've liked it, and it's just enthusiasm. I don't know. I just have enthusiasm for it. I just can't help myself from going in the water. Instead of going to school, I almost want to go surfing.
What do you find out there in the water that has this tremendous attraction?
I don't know. I think it's just the attraction of just nature. It's just something new. It's something different every time you go out. It's not the same. It's never been the same for me.
San Diego put itself on the surfing world map when it won the bid to host the 1966 World Surfing Championships. The event had previously only been held in Australia and Peru. Ocean Beach played host. The ceremonial start of the competition featured the famed father of surfing, Duke the Daddy Kahanamoku. He was joined by City Councilman Alan Hitch and Miss Peninsula, Katie McCowan. The surf was mild, but Australian Nat Young walked away with the first place trophy, and Joyce Hoffman of the United States won the women's division. Under the leadership of Thor Svensson, Wind and Sea Surf Club was also working to improve the image of the sport. Surfing had the reputation of loitering beach bums causing trouble. Beach area residents complained about surfers leaving litter, trampling their flower gardens, and breaking apart backyard fences to use for beach fires. San Diego police reported that by the mid-60s, such complaints were becoming more rare. A police captain of the day said a key element to reducing the vandalism was a new policy. When a surfer was sighted, the police would seize his surfboard for 3 weeks.
How'd you get started?
Well, for me, it was just a natural step up from body surfing and sailing to being around the water a lot. My family does it, my parents. My cousins, my aunts and uncles, and it was just part of our family recreation.
This is not normally thought of as a girl's sport, though, is it?
We're trying to make it more of a girls' sport. No, it isn't, but the girls are making a name for themselves, and they're competing as well as the boys and coming around, and more girls are taking it up all the time.
How do the boys feel about the fact that there are more female surfers now than there used to be?
Some like it, I'm sure they do. Well, I know girls that are just starting out are a problem out in the water, just like the boys that are starting out. When a better surfer sometimes might get bothered by the fact that there's lots of young surfers or grimmies out in the water at the same time. Maybe they bother him or inhibit him. But I don't think on the whole that girls make that much difference out in the water.
Getting back to the lingo, Knepp's report said the serious surfers were attempting to straighten out the ho-dads who had given them all a bad name. It talked about the gremmies needing to learn to stay out of the soup, the whitewater, and avoid pearling, as in pearl diving. In layman's terms, wiping out, or taking gas. Surfers said the trick is to look dignified doing it. They said even a wipeout can be achieved gracefully. A crowded lineup on a rough day was also known as a matchstick factory.
You feel better after you've been in the water. I mean, it gives you a chance for exercise, and you just feel refreshed.
3 years later, in 1968, CBS 8 sports anchor Lyle Bond hit Pacific Beach with cameraman Carl Gilman. He interviewed Neil Norris, a surfer who would go on to notoriety as a legend in the sport as a competitor and board shaper.
And the young gentleman on my right, you surfers, I know Neil Norris. Neil, how long have you been riding that board?
About 7 years.
How'd you get started?
Oh, my dad just bought me a surfboard from the guy that he made one across the alley, and he bought it for me.
How much practicing do you do?
Well, I try to get out every day, a couple times a day.
Now, is this today just practicing and having fun, or what?
Well, practicing for the contest this weekend and just having fun.
What contest this weekend, Neil?
The contest down at Pacific Beach Pier.
Is this a big one?
Yeah, it's international. It's a big contest.
You mean the best surfers from all over be here?
Yeah, right.
What class are you in now?
Well, I'm going to be surfing in the juniors 3A, and then if I do any well at all, I'll be surfing in the 4A.
This is the meet Saturday?
Saturday, Sunday, and I think it starts on Friday.
What time was it? Was the best time to get out and watch you people in action?
Well, 7 o'clock. Get out early.
7 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, that's when they start.
Also chatting with him that day, two young ladies from Crawford High School.
This first young lady is?
Debbie Lynch,
Where do you go to school, Debbie?
Crawford High,
How long have you been surfing?
about 3 years.
And your name?
Sherry Lynch,
Are you related to Debbie Lynch?
yes, she's my sister.
How long have you been surfing?
Almost 3 years.
How did you get started?
Well, we just started renting boards, and then we liked it, so we bought a board, and then we just kept,
Great thrill, huh?
yeah.
In 1965, the cry of Surf's Up was beckoning from south of the border. In July of '65, our CBS 8 cameras and some 40 surfers headed to Baja, California. They jumped on the San Pedro out of San Miguel to a surfing spot that was just being discovered. It was a true surfing safari. Their destination? Todos Santos, a spot that reportedly had never been surfed before. Several years earlier, Thor Svensson spotted what appeared to be an ideal surfing spot about 10 miles off the coast of Ensenada. The location will be dubbed Thor's Hammer in honor of its founder. No paddling out on this trip. Just jump off the boat, onto your board, and start looking for waves. Knepp reported the Todos Santos break as a fairly fast whipping break that runs right up to a rocky shoreline. Surfers compared it to a cross between wind and sea and some of the surfing found in the Hawaiian Islands. Most of the guys were from Wind and Sea Surf Club, many of them award-winning competitive surfers, ambassadors for the sport, and San Diego. The trip included official greetings to the city of Ensenada from San Diego Mayor Frank Curran. The surfing ambassadors were doing all they could to dispel the beach bum, hodad reputation of the sport that surfers had earned in Mexico on previous visits. finally, a look at the oldest known surfing footage in the CBS 8 archives. These are surfers shooting the curl and riding the shoulders at Wind and Sea in 1954. That is totally cool. I love the old-time footage. And what's interesting, the waves haven't changed. It's just the surfboards, bathing suits, and hairstyles that are different. All right, paddling on. Tourmaline Surf Park is a popular spot in North Pacific Beach, but it was undeveloped in the early 1960s. In '63, the city had $150,000 burning a hole in its pocket, and leaders were ready to build an access road, parking area, and conveniences to appease the growing number of surfers. But 3 legendary longboarders weren't too stoked about the idea. They felt it was a lousy break. Our legendary newsman, Harold Keene, met the guys on location to let them speak their minds. Here's the report from January 1963, 2 years before the park opened.
Mike, what are the surfing conditions in this Tourmaline Canyon area?
Well, comparatively to in the San Diego area, they're very poor. In fact, it's the worst I've seen, in this whole area. Out here is all flat bottom. There's no reefs or anything, or sandbars, or any obstacle for the swell to hit and make the wave break correctly. Whereas in other areas, you have a much better break. The waves break much better. Here it's very flat and it never does get good, summer or winter.
For instance, here today, what is the height of the surf as compared with elsewhere along the beaches?
Well, today there's a very good swell running. It's coming from a long distance away, and down by the pier down there is 5 and 6 feet. But out here it's flat, as you can see now. There's no waves at all to speak of.
Where are the best surfing conditions in the county, Mike?
There's Ocean Beach, Pacific Beach, Mission Beach, La Jolla Shores, Wind and Sea. There's quite a few places.
There are actually many places in the county then where surfers would like to go. Do you think that they would not like to be concentrated in any one area such as Tourmaline Canyon?
Yes.
What do you propose as a solution to this problem, Bill?
Well, I would say that a lifeguard that knows the water and knows the surf should come down in the morning and post in areas where the surf is best. And when the surf changes in these different areas with the changing of tides, they should be moved. And the surfer should have an area at least 200 yards to surf in, and the swimmer should have the rest.
Won't this interfere with ordinary swimming? Won't this cause resentment?
No, I don't think so, because the swimmers will still have the majority of the water.
You feel then there should be flexibility instead of having the surfers concentrate in one area. They should be permitted to surf wherever the surfing happens to be best on that particular day?
Yes, I think it should be divided fairly. The beaches are for the public and they're for surfers and swimmers alike.
Well, Mike, do you think that surfers would want to go where the surfing is best, regardless of the fact that they would be setting aside a special area for surfers?
Yes, because the surfer is one of the few individuals left. I mean, he's, nobody can really tell him where to go. He goes for the surf alone. And if the surf is running good in one spot, he'll go surf it,
Do you contend then that even if this is developed at some considerable cost by the city, this Tourmaline Canyon area, that the surfers wouldn't even patronize the area?
No, I don't think they would. I think that if the surf was running someplace else, they would go someplace else. Like I said before, it's flat out here, and there's never any surf to speak of, so they would never surf it.
What do you propose this area be used for then, Mike?
Well, I think if the city's going to construct something here, they ought to make a park or something anyway, archery or a small golf course or anything, something for the children to play in. Because personally, I don't think the surfer will ever use it. It's just a waste of money in that respect.
Well, as we know, one of the reasons why the city has been looking for a place in which to concentrate the surfers is because of the nuisances which private property owners claim have been committed on their property by surfers coming down to the beach. Now, how do you propose to solve that problem?
Well, the best way, with all this money they're spending, they should make access to all of areas. Small access ways to get down the beach.
Which would bypass the private property?
Yeah.
That is a great interview. Well-spoken surfers, too. Now, when that story aired, city officials said the complaining surfers were mistaken, that the 7 other established surfing areas would continue to remain available, and that Tourmaline Canyon would be ideal for a majority of young surfers who were just learning the sport. They also said it would help eliminate congestion that had led to disturbances in other areas. Also, Tourmaline is reportedly the first surf park created in the United States. And by the way, you may have recognized the blonde surfer in that report, Mike Hinson. He is one of 2 surfers featured in the iconic film, The Endless Summer. Later in our show, you'll see CBS 8's Tim Flannery interview Bruce Brown, the director of that classic surf film. All right, let's move to July of 1976. 5 surfers from San Diego were training for the upcoming World Championships in Hawaii. CBS 8 sports director Hope Hines went to Oceanside to talk with Johnny Boyden, who was not only competing in the event, but testing a new surfboard he had created for the competition.
The United States Surfboarding Championships will be in Hawaii July 31st, but I'm standing here this morning in Oceanside, where 5 Southern Californians who will be competing next month work out each day. This is 21-year-old Johnny Boyden of Oceanside, one of 5 Southern Californians who will compete in the U.S. Surfboard Championships in Hawaii. The meet will run for 10 days with about 200 surfers participating. Approximately 50 of those will be from California. Johnny did his thing for us this morning on the big waves, and then we talked about the upcoming championships.
The surf in Hawaii is the best surf in the world, and the competitors are the top competitors in the world, and this is going to be a great contest.
Johnny, which is more important, the surfer or the board?
The surfer is really important in the fact that he has to keep in condition and really keep in shape, because especially in Hawaii, you've got long paddle outs, and in these heats are going to have big waves, long rides. You're going to really have to be paddling, and everyone's going to be going full blast. So you have to be really moving good and be in good shape in order to compete and do good.
So, of course, the board is all important, and I understand you build your own, and the one you've been surfing on here this morning is an example. Can you tell us a little bit about it? Is it different from most other surfboards that people use here in California?
I've developed a new kind of surfboard, and I call it an air lubricated surfboard, and it's for high-speed maneuvering and for really top-notch surfing. And I've tried to develop it. I've developed it, and I've tried to keep refining it so that it gets better and better and better. And now that I'm going to the U.S. Championships, I really want to test it out in the Hawaiian waves to see if my board is as good as the others or if it's better.
All right, back in the late 1970s, CBS 8 had a segment called Journal, an in-depth reporting series. Reporter Dave Cohen explored the surfing lifestyle entrenched in the Southern California culture when this Journal report aired in 1978.
It's the sound and look of the 60s. Half-board will travel. Surfers cruising Southern California beaches trying to find waves even better than yesterday's. But it is 1978, and the sport has changed dramatically.
This is Wind and Sea Beach in La Jolla. Surfing wasn't born here, but it did spend many of its formative years here. When the first crude surfboards appeared, the sport's hardy pioneers spent months looking for a spot with perfect waves. For many, that search ended at Wind and Sea.
This shack was Wind and Sea's social focal point. Luau's almost non-stop, perpetuating the Tahitian-Hawaiian mystique that accompanied surfing's early days. The cookouts ended in 1950, but by then, the Wind and Sea Surf Club was well established.
It was so much fun, we couldn't understand why nobody else thought it was.
Paul Bordieri wasn't a member of the club, but he learned and experimented with new surfing techniques alongside those who were.
When you think back to the old Wind and Sea Surf Club, what kind of memories does that bring back?
A lot of good times. Really a lot of good times. A casual, relaxed kind of an atmosphere. The type of atmosphere that came automatically, the kind that didn't have to be manufactured the way kids seem to have to do it today.
In Bordieri's day, surfing was a happening you'd cut school for. Shapely blondes, beer drinking, roughing it atop the waves. They still cut school and work today, but the camaraderie he knew has waned over the years, and the surfing world, indeed all the world, has added new side pursuits. The first surfboards were hand-carved planks, but like anything else, progress has taken over, and surfing now is a multi-million-dollar business. Today, knee boards can cost more than $100, surfboards as much as $250, roughly another $100 for the wetsuit. But to surfers, cost is secondary. The key is the board and its performance.
Balsa wood boards laminated with fiberglass weigh 30 pounds at the least, figuring the size of the boards 20 years ago. Maneuverability is the key, and because the boards have gotten so much lighter, it's brought 20 times as many individuals into the sport as there were 10 years ago, and probably 50 times as many as there were 20 years ago.
What's the secret? What are you looking for out there in a wave?
A long ride and steep wave.
Finding those long rides may or may not be more difficult than it was 15 or 20 years ago, but as long as the Paul Bordieres continue to manufacture surfboards, and as long as the Dan Rocks continue to buy them, and as long as the ocean continues to lap at the shore, surfing will remain a Southern California pastime. Dave Cohen, News 8.
And it continues to be so. Late into the 1970s, surfing competitions were becoming common along San Diego's coast. In 1979, Gene Cubison went to La Jolla Shores to cover an event that would send the winner to Hawaii. As it turns out, the winner was a La Jolla resident who had to change his strategy in the water to beat the conditions of the surf.
The organizers had planned to hold the meet at Seaside Reef in Solana Beach, but this year they couldn't get permits from the State Parks Department. The show went on nonetheless, and La Jolla Shores proved to be just as good a place as any. This morning, the surf there was rough and choppy, with waves running from 6 to 8 feet. 70 men and 2 women started the competition on Sunday, and after a total of 36 heats, 6 finalists paddled out for the clincher. Among the judges was 21-year-old Chris O'Rourke, a well-known local surfer who's waging a battle against Hodgkin's disease. When the last horn sounded and the points were added up, 23-year-old Bolton Colburn of La Jolla came out on top.
Yeah, it was really rough. It was really hard to get out. You had to spend like 5 minutes at a time paddling out, which meant you had to choose your waves and try to get as many long waves as possible because you wouldn't have enough time to collect a lot of waves.
Colburn got more than just glory for his efforts. The first prize was a round-trip ticket to Hawaii, where he plans to go up against some of the world's top surfers before moving on to competition in Japan. Gene Cubison, News 8, La Jolla.
All right, for those who don't compete, surfing has always had a laid-back vibe, but the guys in the water know that vibe can turn violent if the unwritten rules of the water aren't respected. In 1981, CBS 8's I.J. Holmes took to Torrey Pines to talk about territorialism in the water. And in 1998, Steve Price followed up with a story near Point Loma of a surfer facing felony battery charges for fighting with 2 other surfers.
Surfing of the 1960s, but now there are more people, and more people mean more problems.
You know, everybody wants to catch a wave and have a good time, and so there's not enough waves around sometimes.
The competition for a wave is tremendous. It's a simple matter of trying to divide a limited quantity of water among a growing number of surfers.
Some people become offensive when somebody cuts you out of a wave out there, but I've been surfing long enough that there's always another wave.
Paul Swanson was part of the surfing scene in the 1960s. Now he's watching the Paul Swanson of 18 years ago through his son, Eric, who's 10 years old. While Swanson admits times have changed, he says we remember the good times on the beach and not the problems we caused almost 20 years ago.
Well, we tend to idealize a little bit, remember all the good things about it.
Do you think it's any worse, the kids today, or any worse than you were back then?
No, not at all. I think some of the things they do, we've done things probably just as crazy as they've done.
The surfboards are smaller, the crowd's bigger, and perhaps the tendency to territorialize stronger. There are signs saying basically, non-locals stay away. Lifeguards say there aren't really any serious problems, though.
How about violence on the beach?
There's not too much of that around here. There's not too much at all. Most of it is just minor aggression in the water, localism, but we don't have that many fights or anything.
The waves are the same as they were in the 1960s, and so are the problems. It's just that more of us are having those problems as we wait for the perfect wave. I.J. Hudson, News 8, along Highway 101.
A group of surfers at Ocean Beach flood to the same spot in the water, but they do it riding a wave of courtesy.
There's waves enough for everybody, and there's no reason we can't share. The big thing is proper surf etiquette. You don't drop in on people, you don't hog waves, and that way, if you don't do that, there is plenty of waves for everybody.
Most surfers understand that accidents can happen out here, and sometimes they get messy.
I had a friend that was hit in the hand here a couple of weeks ago, and you know, 10 stitches in your hand. You get hit with a board. I've had 8 stitches in my cheek, and so it is dangerous.
But lifeguards say some surfers get aggressive after accidents, or even worse, get territorial before an accident happens. And every few months, that leads to an all-out brawl in the water.
That they either live in the area and therefore have special rights over the water, or people who surf there all the time and tend to feel like they have a little more ownership than the other people.
This is video of surfer Justin Hawley from 2 years ago when he got in a fight with another surfer.
He threw his punch and then I beat him up.
Now Hawley's been charged again, along with his dad, after another fight with surfers last week. It's something John, who's been surfing San Diego for 25 years, just can't understand.
There's plenty of waves for everybody, and there's no reason why people surf to have fun. I use it for stress relief, and to go out and get in a hassle obviously isn't, you know, doing anything for that.
In Ocean Beach, Steve Price, KFMB News 8.
All right, if you surf in San Diego, you're probably familiar with the California Surf Museum in Oceanside. Did you know the founders of the museum originally considered using abandoned water tanks to house the museum? CBS 8's Chris Saunders tells us about that and more from a report in 1986. And in 1993, Liz Purcell paid a visit to the museum in its first Oceanside location.
Surfing has changed a lot since these 3 middle-aged surfers first took up the sport as teenagers, but they haven't changed at all when it comes to surfing.
Yeah, we're just going to have to head down there and show them how to do it.
That's right.
Stuart Breezer, Ian Urquhart, and Bob Harvey think it's about time somebody created a museum and Hall of Fame for their sport, and now they're doing it.
We just got interested in it, and we thought, gee, there must be, first of all, there must be a lot of old surfers out there who would have an interesting story to tell. And there must be a lot of interesting old surfboards and surf artifacts that are just rotting away in people's garages and things that people would have a real interest in.
One of the things that we were trying to do is really capture this before all of that stuff just gets thrown in the trash or burnt or just lost.
Right now, the Surf Museum is temporarily headquartered at George's Restaurant in Encinitas. They've collected things like this old motorized surfboard, an idea whose time never came. But they want to acquire this abandoned water tank at I-5 and Santa Fe Drive. It's owned by the San Diego Water District, though the district says the property is too valuable and will probably be sold to the highest private bidder. The Water District people say they might have an even better site for the Surfers Hall of Fame, another one of their old water tanks next to Oak Crest Park in Encinitas. Stuart, Ian, and Bob say that's a possibility. They're organizing a museum committee, raising money, and collecting exhibits now. Even though they are an architect, a marketing consultant, and a physicist, respectively, they're really just surfers at heart.
When the surf's up, we head out.
Chris Saunders, News 8, Encinitas.
Grannis grabs his longboard and wades into the ocean. This is a daily ritual for him, and at age 76, he's still having fun. Grannis has been riding the waves for more than 50 years, and he's been shooting them with his camera since 1959.
Well, that's what I meant with you in it. Where's a good one to put your name on?
Some of his photographs are up on the walls of the California Surf Museum across from the Oceanside Pier.
I saw a lot of these big boards in the big waves and got pictures of them.
They're part of an exhibit called The Golden Age of Big Wave Guns, and it features surfing legends like...
You haven't met Woody Brown? What's your name? Eric. Eric? Woody Hi. Brown. Hi.
At 81, Woody Brown is living in Hawaii and surfing every week.
I love the beauty of this water and the clouds and the sky and the mountains in the distance, you know. You feel close to, what, should we say God or nature or whatever you want to call it.
There's a lot of surfing history here. You can read about it, or maybe you can hear about it from surfers like Woody Ekstrom, whose first board in 1941 was his mother's ironing board.
I've talked to other surfers that have done the same thing. Yeah.
You started out on your mother's
ironing board. Yeah, La Jolla Shores.
The Surf Museum has been around for several years in different locations, but it's been here across from the Oceanside Pier for almost 2 years now. The problem is the site is in jeopardy because of downtown redevelopment. The people who run the museum are hoping for a spot in the new redevelopment project. They want to stay close to the ocean in a location where they're visible to beachgoers and where they can keep their eye on the surf. Liz Purcell, News 8, Oceanside.
That's a great story. And since that report in 1993, the California Surf Museum has moved a few times. It's been in its current Oceanside location since 2009. Now, if you've never been to the California Surf Museum, I highly recommend it. It's time well spent. All right, by the 1990s, what was old was new again. The longboards of the 1960s were back in vogue, much lighter than their predecessors. The modern-day longboard opened the genre to a more petite audience. Here's CBS 8's Jody Hammond with a report from 1994.
It was more than 30 years ago, the beginning of the Southern California surf culture. Endless summers, Beach Boys songs, and the longboard. This weekend, more than 200 competitive surfers are hitting the waves in the Oceanside Longboard Surfing Club contest. It's the world's biggest pro-am longboard competition. The longboard was considered something of a dinosaur when the more maneuverable shortboards came out in the 70s. But in the 90s, the longboard is on the comeback trail.
What makes a good longboarder? I think somebody who's just dedicated and has fun. That's all that really counts.
If people sort of think of it as the old man's way to surf, what do you say?
No way. You can do everything you can on a shortboard just on a longboard.
You don't get rich on the pro surfing tour. Prizes amount to a few $1,000s. You do it because you love it. Just how long is a longboard? Well, they've got to be at least 9 feet long. This one's a 9er. This one's 9 feet 9. They go all the way up to at least 11 feet. But after that, they're a little hard to carry around.
I think I've hit the end of the line there. I can't load it in my truck anymore. It's to the windshield, and it goes through the camper boot, and it hits the back door. So that's about as far as it's going to go.
The longboard is catching on, you should pardon the expression, across the board.
The modern longboards are pretty light, and even petite people like me can handle them okay.
The longboard, bridging the surfer generations with the promise of a great ride. Jody Hammond, News 8, Oceanside.
All right, finally, we mentioned earlier, CBS 8 Good News reporter and former San Diego Padre Tim Flannery once interviewed famed film director Bruce Brown. Brown is best known for the 1964 surf classic film The Endless Summer. Flannery caught up with Brown at his home on the central coast of California in June of 1991.
Following the sun around the world, looking for that perfect wave. Sounds like a dream. But in 1962, 24-year-old filmmaker Bruce Brown and surfers Robert August and Mike Hinson did it and brought home their story on 16mm film and called it The Endless Summer. It took 2 years for Bruce to make the film and all his budget. And after the first showing, no one made a sound. Bruce thought the audience hated it, and maybe that he'd made a big mistake.
There was about a 15-second delay, and I had a heart attack. Oh no, all this work. And then everybody started standing up and clapping and cheering, and you know, the people just liked it.
Most people liked it. New York distributors told him it wouldn't attract an audience. Other than surfers, and they don't count. So to prove them wrong, Bruce went to show his film as far away from the ocean as he could get.
So we rented a theater in Wichita in the middle of the winter, purposely picked the middle of winter in Wichita because it was like the least likely place. The thing showed for 2 weeks and broke the theater record that was held by My Fair Lady.
That still didn't prove anything to the New York big shots, so Bruce went for broke. He blew his film up to 35mm, went to New York and rented another theater, right smack in the middle of the Big Apple.
It was a big deal in New York. It was like a happening. Here's these idiots from California, and they're, you know, renting a theater and showing their movie.
and they showed it to packed houses for 1 year straight. Finally, distributors did call and a deal was reached that put The Endless Summer in theaters around the world. But not before Bruce played a little hardball and a few games of his own with the big shots.
You know, we'd pick out guys that tell us, well, this is the fanciest hotel in New York, and we'd say we're staying there, and then we'd stand out in front, you know, they send the limo. You know.
Endless Summer had, and still has, a magic about it that attracts people. Maybe it's the exotic, faraway places that up until 30 years ago had never been captured on film, or the adventure and mystique of finding waves never ridden. Whatever it is, it's made millions of dollars and influenced a lot of lives, not just surfers, but filmmakers and travelers as well. Now, 30 years later, where are these guys that took us around the world? Mike Hinson found life isn't as perfect as the waves he rode at Cape St. Francis and is having some trouble with it. Robert August owns a successful surfboard shop and is shaping surfboards. And Bruce, he rides Robert's boards, still living that endless summer. He took filmmaking where it had never been before and introduced surfers and surfing to a world that only knew what Hollywood portrayed in their bongo beach party movies. In fact, that's the reason Bruce made surf movies to begin with, to show people what surfers are really all about, not to get famous.
But you know, surfing and living at the beach and all, it was way more important to me than, you know, than making movies. I mean, I took the movie thing seriously and worked hard at it, but if somebody said, well, if you want to have this movie career, you got to move to L.A., there's no way. You know, I'd rather have been a milkman in Dana Point. They aren't into the dry flies at the moment.
Bruce still lives at the beach. He's tucked away on the Central Coast, far away from the maddening crowds that took over the beaches he knew so well. And he has his favorite things all around him.
Bring him in the boat, bring him in the boat. Look at that rainbow.
In his pond, he's got plenty of fish. And crawdads that he steams up for dinner. His closest neighbors are swallows who stop by for a drink, and red-tailed hawks that soar on the wind above. On his walls are pictures of the places he's been through the years, and pictures of some of his old friends who've been in some of his old films.
But go back and cue that thing up.
And old films are what's keeping him busy.
Donald Takayama on the first wave at Bellyland.
Bruce made 6 other surf films before The Endless Summer, and because there's a demand for that footage, he's been busy the last year with his oldest son, Dana, putting them together in a video collection.
Some of this music was missing, or the narration was missing, or whatnot. So we used, you know, everything we could that we had that was authentic.
Like Blue Monday, when they have to do the wash.
When something is missing, Bruce has to make it sound like the old stuff, a style he laughs about today, a style he put on these films back in 1959.
It loses something if you don't make, you know, if you try not to make it stupid. So we're just leaving it alone, and hopefully nobody will know it's, you know, was redone. It's almost identical to what it was.
Bruce is almost identical to the way he was when he first started making films. He says he's the happiest when his life's the simplest. And when he's finished with the old films, he's going back to his endless summer lifestyle. Other than that, his plans for the future?
Die. Before that, I don't know. I mean, same as everybody else.
Tim Flannery, News 8.
That brings a kick out to this San Diego Surf Throwback Special. Thank you for hanging out. To see more throwbacks like this on CBS 8+, click on the News tab at the top of the screen. I'm John Howard. Aloha. We'll see you next time when the sun is out and the surf is up. We leave you now with film shot circa 1966 of Toto Santos, the first year CBS 8 shot in color film. Enjoy.